What does happiness from within mean to you?
I would say happiness from within is like going to bed every night and just knowing that I am honoring my soul, I'm honoring my truth, and I don't have regrets. Like I have this way that I live where it's like, I don't mind looking like a fool for love. I don't mind looking like that idiot or that goof or the person that's like, does she really do that? Because I'm actually taking the steps to listen to my soul and jump into something. I'd rather have people think I'm ridiculous or weird or whatever their story is, or, oh, wow, like she really put herself out there, she's drinking the Kool-Aid, than hold back. And so if I'm playing full out with what I truly feel, and I can go to bed at night and being like, oh, I really live today. I really am living my calling. I'm not holding back. Because when we hold back, we actually create poison within ourselves and we get sick. So for me, happiness from within is being expressed and being true.
Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to another beautiful episode of Happiness from Within. My name is Jeanette. I'm the host here of Happiness from Within. Today, I am so ecstatic. I have a beautiful guest here, Deidre Sirianii. And this is actually a round two of an interview, but a first in-person interview.
Mm-hmm.
And today, she's going to be sharing her amazing heart and her story. She has such an incredible story of literally coming out of the darkness and into the light. And she is a prime example of somebody that really shows happiness from within in everything that she does. And I have her here. How are you today?
Oh my gosh, it's so awesome to be here. What a beautiful space to record and share and reconnect. And yeah, this is our second episode together. So thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just go ahead and jump in. Tell the audience, where are you from?
I'm from Vancouver, Canada, and we are currently in Los Angeles. So this is great. Get to be here with you in person.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to Third Wheel Podcasting for those of you that need a studio here in Culver City. Thank you guys for that. So Gigi, take us. So where did your journey with spirituality begin? Was it when you were a child, or did it happen a little bit later in life, or?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My journey with spirituality, I would say, started at a young age. I always felt super connected to everything around me. And I grew up in a dynamic where a family member of mine really struggled with their mental health and had an addiction. And so for me, as a very young child, I became super connected to what that person was feeling, what they needed. And I developed this superpower of being able to tune into everyone's needs. And in that process, I developed my gifts of connecting with people's bodies, their emotions, all of that. And then later on, in more my teenage years, I started to connect more with the other side, you could say. I started to connect more with people who have passed away, and I started to have dreams of my great grandmother that passed away, and she gave me messages, and just a lot of information came online, and I didn't really understand it or know what it meant, so I just kind of dismissed it. And I always thought something was wrong with me because I'm like, oh, like I'm so sensitive, and is what I'm picking up right, or is it me? And I think that people who are empaths and super sensitive, it's like, oh, I'm defective, something's wrong with me. But later on in my adult years, I woke up to my spiritual gifts when I was 20. And this is where universe God was like, you know what, we're just gonna throw everything at her and get her to wake up and be super connected. And I thought I was going crazy. And I shoved my gifts down for a long time, my connection down for a long time. And I got married to someone that I thought I should get married to because I thought it was love. And later on, it was not. And through that experience of being married, I got really good at shoving my voice down, shoving my intuition down, shutting down my true identity until one moment I was standing in my kitchen. It was about 7 years ago, and I was putting my fingers through my hair, and I realized that something felt wrong. I was like, oh, this doesn't feel quite right. So I grabbed my phone and I raced to the bathroom, and I put on camera mode. I start angling at the back of my head, and I'm like, what's going on with the mirror? I was like, what's happening here? And I realized I had a massive bald spot on the top of my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did this happen?
Wow.
How do I fix it? Clearly, the universe is trying to tell me something because it's going after my hair. And at that point in my life, how I appeared to others was super important to me because I got so good at hiding my true identity, hiding my pain, squashing what was really going on beneath the surface. So I go back to my kitchen table after discovering that. I sit down to ground for a moment. And that's when I hear this voice come out of me and say, if you don't listen to your soul, you're going to manifest cancer and die in a year. And
Wow.
I was just like, okay, like, got it, like, got the message. And then I had a flashback to 5 years prior, the only other time at that point in my life I had ever heard this voice speak to me. And I was walking down the aisle, pink roses in my hands, about to marry the man that I think I'm about to spend the rest of my life with. And this same voice says, this just isn't going to work. I didn't, yeah.
Wow.
I didn't listen because I had never heard it before. No one taught me how to listen to my intuition. And I thought I was doing the thing that I was supposed to be doing. I thought I was in love. And so I squashed it down and I said, I do. And then I'm sitting at my kitchen table remembering this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 4 different types of autoimmune disease that the doctors can't help me with. I have chronic pain in my neck and shoulders to the point where my massage therapist actually fired me. I didn't know they could do that, but apparently they can. she's like, I can't help you anymore. And I had food sensitivities, I had anxiety attacks, and I was depressed to the point of having visions of ending my life. And the craziest thing about all of this is from the outside looking in, it looked like I had it going on. Everyone thought I had a happy marriage. You know, in my career, things were going really well. I had a smile on my face. People knew me as the happiest person they knew. Whereas in reality, I was living a lie. And I was having a big wake-up call in that moment. And I knew that if I didn't change my life, if I didn't listen to the language of the soul that was speaking to me through these symptoms, that I wasn't going to be around for another year. And I realized as well, I'm like, I'm in an abusive relationship, not physically abusive, but mentally and emotionally abusive, where my husband would talk down to me every single day. And I felt completely worthless on the inside, but externally, everyone wanted what I had. And so I was in this battle with myself for years, like true identity versus acceptance. Is it really safe to be who I am? Or do I conform and be who everyone else wants me to be? And that's who I became. And so I went down this path. I made a commitment to myself to honor my inner knowing. And it was really hard. It wasn't easy. I had to get radically honest with myself. And I was like, fuck, like I'm the person who created this for myself. I can't really blame anyone else. I had to have courage to like sit with that and then make the changes. And then lastly, rip off the Band-Aid and take massive inspired action. And that looked like going deeper in the work that I was already in of healing, listening to the language of the soul, studying with shamans, but actually doing the embodiment work. And then eventually leaving that 8-year relationship, starting a new business. And now today, one of the foundational pieces of turning your light on, of waking up to your true identity, is actually understanding the language of the soul and understanding how your body and soul speaks to you, because your body is the house of your soul. So if your body is showing disease, it's because your soul is like, hey, sister, hey, brother, you're not listening. And I'm going to keep giving you the signal until it goes away. And I didn't believe this until I started living it. And then all of those symptoms went away within 3 months. 3 of the 4 autoimmune diseases, gone. Depression, gone. Chronic pain, gone. Food sensitivities, gone. All of them went away as soon as I fully trusted in the messages, and I went all in on my healing, and that's one of the things that I teach. And then,
Wow.
of course, transforming your darkness, your trauma into your greatest gifts for humanity.
Wow. Yeah, so if we were, for example, to take this image from back then where you are, it'd be like happiness, not from within, but happiness from the outside, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone saw you with this happy face,
Yeah.
great, fiance, but that wasn't your reality, right?
Yeah. And I think this is the struggle that a lot of us get into is we're like, well, we get so much external validation for being a character that we forget how we feel, or we push that down because, well, the world really likes who I am. Yeah. And we live in an outside world, an outside-in world where that's actually more acceptable than honoring your truth. Honoring your truth looks messy. Like, my life doesn't look as perfect as it did back then, but am I happy? Most of the time, I'm pretty happy. So 100%.
Wow. What does happiness from within mean to you?
I would say happiness from within is like going to bed every night and just knowing that I am honoring my soul, I'm honoring my truth, and I don't have regrets. Like, I have this way that I live where it's like, I don't mind looking like a fool for love. I don't mind looking like that idiot or that goof or the person that's like, did she really do that? Because I'm actually taking the steps to listen to my soul and jump into something. I'd rather have people think I'm ridiculous or weird or whatever their story is, or, oh, wow, like she really put herself out there, she's drinking the Kool-Aid, than hold back. And so if I'm playing full out with what I truly feel, and I can go to bed at night and being like, oh, I really lived today, I really am living my calling, I'm not holding back. Because when we hold back, we actually create poison within ourselves and we get sick. So for me, happiness from within is being expressed and being true in the rhythm of life without trying to block the flow of love, block the flow of self-expression, block the flow. And I'm not always 100% perfect at it. Some days I'm like, oh, I didn't do that thing because I was like, I thought, this might happen. And, but for the most part, I feel fully expressed. And at the end of the day, I feel empty and content. And I think that's what happiness is.
Wow. I literally just got chills. I mean, that was such a beautiful description. Wow. Can you take us back to the time you talked about this in your TED Talk, the experience that you had?
Yeah.
That was an awakening for you?
Yeah. So I really do believe that our deepest wounds and deepest traumas are our greatest gifts for humanity. And this is some of the work that I teach and I bring people through, and I've been initiated through, right? And I'm not the first person to say your wounds can become your gifts and all of that. But when I look back on specific moments in time in my life that, have been traumatizing, or, oh my gosh, I have so much shame around that, when I can actually fully see the experience for what it was and the gifts, I'm so grateful. So going back to my TEDx, that was probably one of the hardest things for me to do, is to get on stage and share my story. But I'll give a little snippet because the story is old, like the whole story of the TEDx is old, but the actual story is so relevant. And one night I was getting together with this guy that I used to date. And this is when I was like 18 or 19 years old. And I felt really sick in my stomach that morning. And I wanted to connect with him just to tell him I couldn't see him anymore because something was feeling really off in our interactions. And I was like, I want to honor my intuition.
Sure.
And so we got together, we were driving around in my car, and I was like trying to say the thing like, I can't see you anymore, because it was making me sick. And at the end of the night, I'd go to drop him off at his place, and I park in his driveway. I'm like, okay, have a great night. And I didn't end up saying the thing that I need to say. Like, I think I might have kind of said it, but I didn't fully express myself. Like, I can't see you anymore. And I remember being parked in his driveway and him looking at me with a big smile. He had a really beautiful eyes and big, beautiful smile, really handsome guy. And he's like, oh, just come in for a little bit. And I was like, no, I got to get going, And he's like, what? Like, just come in for 5 minutes. What's the big deal? And my body was saying no, but in the physical reality, I was like, well, there's no real threat here, so I'm going to I'll go inside. Sure. So I kind of swallowed my truth, swallowed what my body was telling me. Again, at that point, I didn't really understand intuition, or I didn't know enough about my own intuition and trusting myself. So I take off my seatbelt. I remember like unclipping it and opening the car door, and I started walking towards the front door of his house, and I felt like I had cement bricks in my legs, like one leg foot in front of the other, walking towards the door. And I was like, man, felt like my body was shutting down. But again, logically, there's nothing to fear. Like everything's fine. I get into his home within about 5 minutes. He pinned me down, and I totally blacked out. And I woke up, I don't know how long later, because with trauma, we can actually totally black out as a way to protect ourselves from experiencing the trauma. And I just remember waking up or coming out of it and him saying, watch you go and tell your friends I raped you. And it was in that moment where I was just like, what happened? Like, really, it was the beginning of the journey of a lot of healing that I need to go on. And I remember leaving his place that night and just being like, I can't tell anyone about this. And also, did I bring that upon myself? Did it even happen? And this was like a battle that I had within my system, within my physical body for a long time after. And I remember not telling anyone. I didn't tell anyone about it. And then I moved to Calgary because I lived in BC before. And then I moved to Calgary for school. And I remember like forgetting about it because like, what am I going to do with that information, right? I'm not going to stew on it. So I just kind of forgot about it. Well, quotation marks. And I remember being in university and having a really hard time looking men in the eyes. Like I had a lot of body shame, and I had a really hard time really being with men. And so I didn't really date anyone when I was in university, and I found myself, if a man was like checking me out or giving me attention, I didn't feel safe in my body. And I was like a beautiful young girl at the time, like in early 20s. And later on that year, and I didn't share this in my TEDx, the last year of my program, I remember going around one of the corners out of my the hall of my program, and I bump into the guy who raped me years prior.
Wow.
And I was walking with two girlfriends, just an average day, coming out of our like broadcasting corner, and just like I was in total shock. I was between both of them, and I was walking by this guy, and I don't know exactly what happened, but I remember sneaking off to the bathroom and like dry heaving on the toilet, like trying to throw up, like just felt so sick and like shaking. And so he was going to my school, like in a different province from where I originally knew him, for the last year. And so I had PTSD to the point where I had stomach pain every day. I couldn't sleep, a really bad anxiety. And I started seeing a counselor, and I tried to like express like, this is what's going on, and they couldn't do anything. And there were days where he would like drive home. He would like follow me home as I would like walk home from the gym. Like it was a really hard time for me in my life, going down that road. And then at the time, somewhere in the mix, I met my ex-husband, the guy I ended up marrying, and he was a police officer. And I remember being like, hey, this is what's going on, and I want to report it because I don't feel safe. And his response was like he told me not to. He like shamed me for my emotions, shamed me for my experience. And I'm like in the middle of like experiencing PTSD. And I went on a medication for the last 6 months of school just to be able to go to sleep at night because I was like in such fight or flight. And I was just so let down by like the man that I was with that I thought was going to protect me, by the school system, and just like all of this, like, oh, we can't do anything about that. And like, okay, there's a predator in our school right now. And I wouldn't even use that language, but I felt super alone, super disconnected. But the beautiful thing about this experience is, as someone who works with people who have trauma, I understand how it shows up on like the mental, level, the emotional level, the physical, and also just like that overwhelming feeling of I feel helpless. And we live in a world where so many people aren't listened to when they actually are going through things because we haven't been trained how to create change when we're uncomfortable. So it's like husband, or he wasn't my husband at the time, my boyfriend at the time was probably like, I don't want her to feel this, but also I'm just going to shame her for feeling that because I don't want to deal with maybe how it makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know. Like, who knows what the whole story is there. Mm-hmm. Later on, I ended up marrying the guy, and one of the many reasons we didn't work out was because I couldn't feel my feelings. And I remember it was probably one of our last years that him and I were together, my ex-husband and I. This girl came up to me because I used to teach yoga full-time with my past business, and she told me that she was raped by someone at a big university in Vancouver. And I was like, girl, you need to report that. And she's like, well, he's not teaching that class anymore, so it's okay. I'm like, no, it's not okay. I went in like to super mama bear mode. I'm like, it's not okay. You're not the only one, da 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 da. And then after giving her that advice and holding that space, I'm like, holy shit, I never reported what happened to me. And so what did I do? I was like, man, like, because I'm really about like living what I teach and practicing, being an embodiment of it. So I reported it where I lived in Vancouver, and yeah, it was just like quite the experience of being let down by the system and feeling not supported. And also going to the Vancouver Police Department and reporting it. They were one of my clients at the time. They were a corporate client of mine with my yoga business. So I know most of them. Wow. And I'm going and I'm like, hey, this happened so many years ago and da 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 da. That was hard. The next thing that was hard was the woman who interviewed me about the whole situation went to school with my ex-husband and was like, he told you not to say anything? And so there was like so many emotions. And then my information was leaked to the guy, the predator, we could say. And he had been stalking me for years on the internet and knew all this stuff about me. And I just remember like calling my auntie one day and being like, hey, I know this sounds crazy, but I feel really unsafe and this is what's going on. And I just remember her coaching me through it. Now, fast forward years and years later, and having healed the trauma, going through some very deep processes to complete it, I'm like, wow, like so many women don't feel safe in their body because this is happening all the time. It's not being addressed. Women don't feel safe in their body because it's not actually safe to be a woman in the world that we live in. Men over-sexualize women because they haven't learned sexual mastery. And women don't know self-defense to actually reprogram their nervous system so that if they are attacked, they can fight back. So this is something I'm starting to get really passionate about today because I really do feel that we need to have self-defense in schools for girls. And I've been followed home in Vancouver a couple times at night by men. And because I'm trained in self-defense and all this stuff now and showing up differently, I can turn around and be like, what's up? Like, what are you doing? And the guys are like, you're crazy. And they run away. It's happened multiple times. But like, I'm a small woman. And I just feel like a lot of the experiences that I've had, I'm here to be a part of that change and be a voice to it rather than just being like, oh, I'm going to have shame around it. And it's also caused me to move through all this shame around body shame that I had when I was a victim of that, but also my relationship to my husband, etc. So it's like so many gifts, but also like, let's change the world, Wow. I had a lot to say there.
No, it was just so beautiful. I mean, I admire you so much, Deidre. I mean, just getting to know you. It's been a few years now, whatever it is.
Yeah, a couple of years, 2-3 years.
It's just been incredible, to learn from you and see what you're doing. I didn't bring your book, darn.
That's okay.
You have an awesome book, Turn Your Light On. Definitely recommend you guys. The link will be below. But her book is amazing, amazing. Please check it out. You can get it on Amazon. It's called Turn Your Light On. It'll literally help you to turn your light on.
Yeah.
And I also went through your program, which is absolutely amazing. Can you talk a little bit about your program, Turn Your Light On? And yeah. How can people turn their damn light on?
Yeah. Well, Turning your light on is really about moving from the darkness to the light. And when I think of like darkness to light, I think about the boogeyman in the closet where you're like, when you're a child and you're like, I don't want to open my closet, or I don't want to look under the bed because, you know, there's a boogeyman under there. It's like, let's just turn on the light, see what's there. And if we don't like what's there, let's transform it. And that's a big part of what Turn Your Light On. It's about waking up to the truth of who you are and who you're meant to be. And body shame, being a victim, being in old cycles of self-sabotage, addiction, being in pain, physical pain, emotional pain, feeling like you're playing small. This is probably the biggest symptom people come to me with today with the work that I focus on is I feel like I'm playing small and I'm not fully living in my gifts as fully as I know I'm meant to be. I have a vision of myself, but I'm not moving the things forward. Even though I might know what I need to do, I'm getting in my own way. I'm sabotaging. So the program is designed very intentionally to help you quiet the noise because we live in a world of like massive distraction. You know, you're on your phone for 5 minutes and you've probably watched so many people's stuff on Instagram or whatever. And it's like, what was I doing on here again? I forget, right? And it's just like this cycle. So we talk about quieting the noise, how to really instill that in your life so that you can be intentional. Because if like, you know, even the room that we're in right now, like it's very spacious. It's a small room. But if there were like 50 boxes in here right now, we'd be like, oh, you know, like we don't have any, you know, space to breathe. And if someone's like, oh, just have a casual conversation and have fun. It's like, yeah, but there's boxes everywhere. And I'm afraid the box is going to fall on me. Like it would just be distracting. So most people are trying to fulfill their dreams, step into who they are and do all of this stuff. But there's so much clutter and distraction. So one of the first pieces of the program is really clearing out the muck, quieting the noise so you have space to actually see what fits in your life and be intentional. From there, it's about going in and clearing out, you know, karma. So karma is, you know, there's different definitions of it in different spiritual practices and all of that. But really karma is created as a result of your behavior, right? So, you know, if you drop something on top of this glass table, it's going to break. And there's some karma there. Oh, I got to clean it up or I got to pay for it, whatever the thing is, right? So karma, how it shows up in our life as humans is we may not go after the type of partner that we want. We may not go after our dreams. We may hesitate when we want to say something, or we may not follow through on something that we want because something's happened in the past. And even though consciously we may not have awareness of it, there's an energy behind that of like, oh, but in the past this happened. So a really good way to know if you have karma to clear in your life around money, relationship, health, anything is, are you catching yourself saying the statement, oh, I would do that, but in the past this happened. I would put myself out there for dating in a relationship, but in the past I got hurt. So anything around like in the past this has happened is there's energy from the past that needs to be clear karmically for you to have space to be like, oh, I don't have cords that are pulling me into my past. And then in the program, we also do some trauma work. It's not like deep, heavy stuff where you're going to sit in your pain. It's not therapy, and therapy is great. There's a place for it. This is more coaching and moving forward. It's about actually seeing all the things that have happened in your life, pulling out the gems, and then using those gems and being excited about those gems and having confidence and getting clarity on who you are and what your gifts are to the world and focusing on that. And through the service, through the giving your gifts and being in that space of service, oftentimes the things from our past that are painful, they're not painful anymore because we're actually using them to help other people. And then it's about connecting with your purpose, your impact. But foundationally, the program on a whole is it helps you stop playing small. It helps you get the things out of the way that are in the way that are blocking you from fulfilling your life's purpose and making the impact that you're here to make and to shine your light and to stop dimming down who you really are.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You know, the thing that's kind of flowing through my body right now is this word embodiment. And I feel like that's definitely something that you were sharing about. You're starting to do some music. Is that correct? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh my gosh. What do you want to know?
Just like where was this part of you that you're like, I want to start embodying this, because that takes a lot of
Yeah.
courage to do that.
Yeah, it's so crazy. So I have this rule with myself because for so long in my life, I didn't listen to my intuition for so long in my life.
Yeah.
I tried to be something that I wasn't, I guess you could say, to be loved or accepted. So now if I have a vision of something, I make it my mission to fulfill it. So a couple of years ago, I had a vision of writing books and singing music on stage. The book was very outside the comfort zone, but it was a little bit less outside the comfort zone than singing on stages. So I was like, okay, God, universe, I'm going to take the assignment of writing the book. So I wrote the book, Turn Your Light On, right?
Yeah.
And I got that out of my way. And then the vision of like singing on stages and expressing myself came up, and not just speaking on stages because I already do that, but singing. And singing has been one of those things where it's like probably one of the most vulnerable things for, I don't want to say everyone because I don't know how everyone feels about singing, but for me, it's like the expression of the soul and the heart. And like that's a vulnerable thing to do. So I had this vision about a year ago. And I was like, okay. And so I hired a singing coach. And I remember the first singing lesson that we did. I was in Mexico at the time and we were on Zoom and I was singing the song. Oh my gosh, how does it go? Desperate for change and starving for truth. Anyways, one of my favorite songs ever. Oh, Hanging by a Moment by Lifehouse is my absolute favorite song since grade 4. Don't know why I'm a hopeless romantic. Can you tell? And so I was singing that song. But like my voice was like this. I'm like, desperate for change. Like it was horrible. It was bad. And I was like, okay, like that. Okay, you gave me this vision. I showed up for the call and I just kept doing it. I just kept showing up, being in the discomfort. And now it's been a year. And now I'm working on a musical album. I have 8 songs that are recorded. And do I still have a ways to go as far as like singing and developing my voice and all of that? 100%. But am I in a totally different place than I was a year ago? Night and day. If you were to see a video or hear, you'd be like, that's not the same person. That person number 1 should never sing because they're horrible. And person number 2, okay, they've got something there. They've got something going on. So for me, I love to have a challenge in my life and I love to kind of dive in and master. And so this is a new journey. And for me, the singing the songs has been so healing because the work that I've been in on like a personal initiation that I haven't been teaching externally as fully as I am with the other work that I do has been healing the heart of past heartbreak and transforming it into unconditional love. And you and I were talking about something that happened on the weekend where I was like, damn, universe is like, Dee, we're going to give you another situation where you can just kind of like experience that again. So music has been such a beautiful way to heal that and express parts of myself that are vulnerable. And so I'm excited to share music in the new year when my first song comes out.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. So Deidre, tell us a little bit about advice for people that are in relationships.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. So advice for people who are in relationships.
Maybe that want to leave a relationship.
Ooh.
Because that's the biggest thing, right? Because you had the courage, right? Like you found that courage within you to leave your husband. Like, this isn't working anymore. Like, most women don't do that. Like this, like that's a big no-no, right?
Yeah.
But just anything that flows through you, like, yeah, let's have a dialogue about it.
Yeah, I love this question. I was like, do I stay? Do I go? I was just actually on someone's show talking specifically about this. Wow. And it was cool because it was with a couple that are in a very deep embodied relationship. And then of course me, single, and also like, yeah, this is what I would do. So there's so many layers to it. For me, the biggest challenge for me within relationship has been being in a relationship with someone who says they're going to change or going to do the work, but they're not actively taking those steps. And this is something I hear a lot from women is, and men too. Oh, my husband or my partner says they're going to do this, but the same thing keeps happening. One of the biggest things that we need to recognize is patterns. And if something is continuously giving us a result or a pattern, something needs to change. But if the person is unwilling to change or take responsibility for their actions, well, you need to take responsibility for your actions and ask yourself, am I willing to stay in this relationship if this person never changes, if they never do the work, if they never grow? Because a lot of us are expanders, or a lot of the people that I work with and surround myself with, it's we want to be better, we want to grow, we want to be more conscious. And when I was in my relationship, there was no growth there, you know? And for me, that was really challenging because I was on this healing journey.
Sure.
And growth journey, and my partner wasn't, and everything was always my fault. And I remember going to a counselor, I think it was like the last few years that we were together, and I was just like, because I got into personal development because I thought something was wrong with me. I'm like, I need to be better because I'm broken, you know? And I think a lot of people get into personal development because they think something's wrong with them and they need to be fixed. And so I remember going to this counselor, and I was like, okay, like I need to be better. My husband's right. Like, I don't know what I said. I wish I could have a recording of that session just to be like, this is hilarious. But after a few sessions, she's like, what if it wasn't you? Like, what if you weren't the problem?
Yeah.
And I was like, huh? What? I'm not the problem? And she's like, what if you weren't the problem? It sounds like you're actively doing things, you're in communication, you're shifting, and I was like, oh, and that's where like a light bulb moment happened for me. I'm like, maybe it's not me. And everyone has their own patterns. So what I experienced then might not be somebody else's pattern or awareness. But for me, it was like I've had a pattern of taking on things that aren't my own and then trying to change in order to make the other person happy. So I know on a foundational level, I could make any relationship work if I wanted to, right? But the thing is, if you're going to be in a relationship, you want to be with someone who's actively also bringing their full self to the table. And that's a lot of accountability, showing up and doing the work. So for me, it was realizing, oh, it's not me. I'm not the problem. And oh, maybe there is something going on his end. And then calling him to step forward and him not being able to do that for me in the relationship. So for me, it was, he's not changing. And then when I finally left, like I remember this moment, I was walking home from the grocery store, had a bunch of groceries in my hand, and I just fell to the ground with my groceries, like in front of our doorstep. And I just collapsed. And I was like, wow. I can't do this anymore. Like I can't do it for one more day. And I went online that night. I found an apartment. And then the next day, I was like to my husband at the time, I'm like, I'm moving out tomorrow. I have an apartment. And I didn't care if I had any of the furniture or anything else. I was just like, I'm moving out. And it was really hard. Wow. But when I look back on the choices that I've made in my life, it's one of the most proud moments I have. Not because he's a bad person. Yeah. Like, he's not a bad person. He's a great person. Just together, it wasn't right. And we were trying to make something work that wasn't aligned. We're on totally different paths. And, he's remarried now. I'm sure he's much happier without me in his life, I'm sure it's a lot better for him too. But me leaving was a huge growth step for me. So if you're in a relationship where you're not able to be yourself, you're shamed for your emotions, the person's either unwilling to look at themselves, or they say that they're going to change, but they don't, or maybe they have a bunch of tools, but they're not willing to use them with you. Because a lot of the time when we go to these personal development things, we learn all of these relational tools like, hey, check in with your partner. You might have a ton of tools, but if you're not using them, that's something to investigate too, because, if you really want to make something work with someone, you'll make it work. And the truth is, a lot of us, and I hate saying this, but I see this so much, a lot of people are in relationships because it's comfortable, not because they're in love with the person, but because they're afraid of being alone, which might be something to look at if you're afraid of being alone and being on your own. I was afraid. I remember getting out of my marriage, and like, I was out with some friends one night and they were like, I don't remember what happened, but I just was like, who would want to date me? Like, I didn't think I was pretty. I didn't think I was smart. I thought I had nothing going on because I was talked down to every single day.
Wow.
And then the external world was like, oh, we like you. We like your goofy side. We like all these things about you that my husband didn't like.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, I can be myself and be accepted. And so it was a big shift for me. So the question is, should you stay or should you go? If the person has the same values as you and they respect you and they're a cheerleader, or they'll at least like be supportive of you, that's a good foundation to have. If you don't have that foundation, I don't see it working. I feel like it would be a violation against who you really are. So vision, values, and support and respect. And I think that oftentimes there's a lack of respect a lot in relationships, and I don't think that can work. Yeah.
Wow. You know, your story reminds me a little bit of one of my other podcasting friends. Her name's Stephanie.
Okay.
She has a podcast called Lightworkers Lounge.
Oh, cool.
And she was with her husband a long time. And she talks about on her podcast exactly what you were saying. It's not that he was a bad person. You know, she's very open.
Mhm.
Now she's with the love of her life. You know?
Oh, amazing.
But she talked about how that was really super difficult, you know. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
your story is amazing. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
So I have another really good question for you. What would you say to actually the woman or the man listening out there when it comes to motherhood wounds and healing those? 'Cause I know this is a really deep one, but just any, I don't know, anything that comes to your heart, you know, or that
Yeah.
flows through you, you're just going to say the right thing that's going to touch the right person that's listening or watching this right now.
Wow. Well, I think this is really interesting. I don't know if I'm fully qualified to talk about motherhood wounds because I haven't like really like gone deep into that. But what I have noticed in interactions with men is that men who I've either dated or coached
Mhm.
or been in a relationship with who have core motherhood wounds that I've seen from the outside in
Sure.
is that they crave a lot of attention from women.
Mm.
And so sometimes, and this is again my interpretation, if we don't get the love and support from a father or a mother, or you know what we really need when we're growing up, we seek that externally. And so
Interesting.
there was someone I was with years and years ago, and I think there was a dynamic going on there. And everywhere we went, he needed validation from women. He needed it. And for me, we were such good friends. We had so much fun together. And I was like really confident, and I was like, whatever. Like I actually didn't really care because we had such a great bond. But at the end of the day, I was like, this man needs a lot of external validation from women. And I can't give that to him because I can't be fake and be like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. And I love your car and your money, or all the superficial things. Like, oh my gosh, like that stuff is energetically exhausting to me, and I can't put on a show.
Yeah.
So if you need to get that from someone else, great. But I feel that when men are going from one woman to another, constantly needing sex from multiple women who don't have the discipline and aren't able to have good boundaries with women and themselves, there's a motherhood wound there.
Wow.
And that's really about nourishing yourself and honoring yourself, because there's a lot of different ideas around casual sex and all of that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's, I personally, my perspective is I don't think that it comes from a healthy place if you're going from one person to another. And I went on a dating app for like a week once a few years ago when I first like opened my heart after taking a couple years off of relationships. And the few guys that I went on dates with, they were like, wow, like you're exactly what I've been looking for. And then there was like this intense fear in their eyes of like, but I'm not ready. Like it was just like, and it was like multiple dates that I went on, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I feel like it's because they hadn't healed from their past relationship, and they had been jumping from one relationship to another, one woman to another. But with me, they were like, oh my gosh, she sees me, and this is scary. Because, you know, I see men fully, and I love and respect men, but also I'm not available for that.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I think if you constantly need validation from men as a woman, or, vice versa, it's because there's a wound there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your recent experience that you had running into?
Oh, this is great.
This is a great story.
It's a great story.
You guys got to hear this. Fresh right off the grill.
This just happened. So, oh my gosh. Okay, so about 4 months ago, I bumped into an ex-boyfriend of mine from 15 years ago. So this is like, hadn't seen him in 15 years.
Whew.
And he was the first man I ever said I love you to. And
Wow.
I told him I loved him in my parents' basement when I was like 19 years old or whatever. And I remember crying because it was like so intense. I'm like, I love you, right? And we just had a really sweet relationship. And then I went off for school to Calgary and he went off for school to where he went. And we did long distance and we wanted to make it work. And anyways, it was like before summer one year we broke up. I broke up with him over the phone. I was like, this just isn't working for me. I didn't trust him. I felt like he was cheating on me or entertaining something.
Wow.
And so broke up with him. Super firm, super in my intuition. I'm so proud of past D. And then a few months later, he calls me and he wants to get back together. He misses me. And I'm like, too late. Like I'm seeing someone else and no.
Wow.
But I always thought about him on his birthday. And I'd always wonder what he was up to. And because he told me he didn't cheat on me, I always wondered if I potentially was wrong, if my intuition was wrong, and if I was too harsh on him. So although I got over him when I got married and in the new relationship, I always had this inkling in the back of my mind that was like, what if I made a mistake and I never want to make that mistake again? Right? So in my marriage, I gave my husband so many chances to change. And it was about 5 or 6 years ago after I got separated from my husband. I just got my eyebrows done. Random fact, but I just got out of like the salon from getting my eyebrows done. And this guy, my ex-boyfriend from 15 years ago, messages me. And he's like wanting to get together. Wow. And I don't know if he found out I was recently single or what, not really sure. And he's like messaging me quite a bit. And my gut was like, something feels off here. I was like, hey, are you in a relationship? And he's like, yeah, I'm seeing someone. I'm like, how long have you been seeing her for? Oh, a year or so. Oh, but you're messaging me like to get together with me. I'm like, nah, no, that doesn't work for me. Right? Like, sorry, bud. Like I'm not available for that. And then I was like, I just have one more question for you. Did you cheat on me X amount of years ago? And he denied it. And then he finally confessed. And I was sitting in my car like 6 years ago and I just start crying.
Wow.
Not because he cheated on me, because that was like, 10 years ago at the time, but because of the impact of him lying to me about it.
Wow.
Because of that, gaslighting that happened and him saying that didn't happen and I'm making things up and we're supposed to be together, whatever it was years and years ago, I gave every man after him 1,000 chances. And when I look back on like my marriage and all of that, I'm like, would I have given my ex-husband that many chances? Would I have even married him? I don't know. And I really felt the weight and the pain of being gaslit and lied to with my intuition. So I stopped talking to him then. We didn't talk for much. It was like a day. And then I bumped into him 4 months ago at a party. And it was just kind of an awkward run into like, oh, hey, oh, it's been 15 years. Cool. And then we were like kind of talking. I'm like, all right, nice. Because there's nothing to say, right? I didn't have anything to say. And then, so didn't think anything of that. But then after I bumped into him 4 months ago, because I am working on this musical album, I wrote a song about him. And I won't tell you the title of the song because it says the person's name in the song. But the main line is, thank you for showing me what love's not.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you for showing me what love's not is like the main part of the main chorus. And then this past weekend, I was at a music festival. And I was having fun with friends and all of that. And we have this, one of my friends is a Tantra teacher, and she does a lot of like sacred sexuality stuff, a lot with men and women. And she's like, we should have like a worshiping men tent or like whatever. And I'm like, okay, sure, sign me up. I'll like participate. Sure. Right. So it's me, her, and another friend. And so they're recruiting women and men to be a part of it. So there's an inner circle and there's an outer circle. So there's like 10 men on the inside, 10 women on the outside. And it's dark in the room. It's kind of like there's candlelight. We have roses and we're going around like this to men's faces and just like saying kind affirmations. It's not sexual at all. I just want to preface that because you're like, huh, worshiping men circle? What's going on? Getting X-rated over here. And so we're going around in a circle and I'm giving this guy affirmations and like, you know, putting the rose on his face and stuff. And he's like, D, that's my nickname, D, especially from my hometown. And I'm like, huh? And then he says his name. It's so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, hey. So I just blast him with love. Wow. And we finish the circle. He chats with me for like a minute. And there's really, again, nothing to say. But funny enough, I just finished recording that song on his birthday, which was a couple days ago. And his birthday is in the song. And so the producer that I'm working with is like, Dee, you should just like text him the song as a birthday present. I'm like, it's not a nice song because it's kind of like Taylor Swift meets light rock, but more mature. And he was a really great lesson, but just interesting how the universe, God, brings up these initiations for love. And I've had so many of them over the last couple of years where I've looked like a fool for love. I put myself out there. I've had all these awkward encounters with men from like the past. And I'm just like, okay, another great song, another great lesson. Awesome. Because I'm writing a book on love and relationships. So perfect. Wow. But like, it's been interesting. It's been an interesting journey for sure.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, it sounds like just really deep healing, releasing, and finding that happiness from within.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And it's grateful that I'm so grateful we bumped into each other because it's like, great. I've transformed it into love. Like so much love to you, but that's a long time ago and I'm complete.
No, that's just incredible. I literally, every time I'm just there's a little goosebumps underneath the...
I love it.
No, that's great. That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I would just like to wrap up with, just any closing words that you have that come from your heart and soul. And yeah.
Oh, wow.
Or if you want to sing a song, I'm not trying to put you on the spotlight. Just anything that you would like to do.
Ooh, I don't think I'm going to sing a song right now. I've been singing for like 4 days straight. But I will share when it's time. I would say the biggest message is that if you have a vision of something that you want in your life, that's your higher self saying this is a possibility and it's your responsibility to make it happen. Yeah. And I think that often in life with relationships, because sometimes we might meet someone and be like, oh, wow, I have this vision of potentially something happening with them, maybe in business or romantic. I don't know. Like we have these visions. We shy away from those and we're like, oh, I'm crazy. Or, oh, I had this vision of being on stage or singing or writing a book, or having a podcast. That's your higher self saying, pay attention. And when you can step forward and have the responsibility of taking the action, that's where you become unstoppable. And that's where happiness from within is really the foundation of everything, because we're here to evolve. We're here to create. We're here to listen to that. And depression, pain, dis-ease comes from not listening. And that's how you turn your light on, is you listen to the nudges and you get the right support. Yeah.
Woo! That was really beautiful. Well, Deidre, I really, from my heart to yours, just really want to say thank you for being a beautiful guest here on Happiness from Within. And we'll definitely do it again in the future.
Oh, I can't wait. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much and have a great day, guys. Bye for now.